just now realizing that my tint shop told me not to put anything on the windshield after getting tint, and yeah, there's like an 8-inch suction cup on there now, so it should be all right, right? 30 days later and over 1,000 miles with my new refresh Model 3 Performance. And there's two ways that I can review this car. One, from the perspective that you're brand new to Tesla, which I'm not. Or two, from the perspective of you're familiar with the Model 3, what's new about this one? I have 1,000 and 10,000 mile reviews of my previous 22 Model 3 Performance, and the past month's worth of video here on the channel have been all about the new stuff with this car. So instead, I thought, why don't we go on a drive, I talk about what I like, what I don't like, and if I think this car is worth it. So as this car is spec'd with gray exterior, white interior, I paid, I believe it was $54,490, then add about $3,000 in tax, so let's just say $57,500. However, this exact spec is a little more expensive now. I believe the car just base is like $1,500 more, but white is now free, so you can still qualify for the tax credit with this exact spec, but you'll just pay, I believe it was about $500 more than what I paid. Speaking of tax credit, they've now came out with this new option where if you get FSD, so an $8,000 upgrade, you can get any color paint you want and interior as well, and it won't affect your tax credit eligibility. It's just something that they're offering. So it's like, hey, you spend $8,000 and we'll give you the paint option for technically free because software and FSD doesn't affect tax credit eligibility. Speaking of which, I don't qualify for the tax credit, and I've had a lot of people asking me, well, if you don't qualify, then why didn't you get the red paint? And well, you all have seen my last two Model 3s. I've had a gray one and a black one and another gray one. I don't like bright colored cars. I like looking at them. I like seeing other people own them, but I don't want to own one. So the first thing you see when you look at the car, the exterior, which has been redesigned, but it still looks like a Model 3. The front end got new headlights and a different front fascia, and the rear end, it's got new taillights, which I think universally everyone likes. It's got a bigger, more angular spoiler compared to the last Performance 3, and it's also got a diffuser now, which I've already been vocal about that I'm a fan of both of these changes, and I think that this car looks better than the previous Model 3. Now this Performance does have the new Performance wheels, otherwise known as the Warp wheels. The US gets the 20 inches, whereas the ones coming out of China get the 19s. A lot of people have actually said that they'd much rather have the 19s because they're a little bit more versatile, a little bit better ride quality, but I think that these are the worst looking Performance wheels. The original Performance wheels, I think those are the best, then Uber turbines, and then these. However, these are the most functional because they are forged. So they are super, super lightweight. I've seen them weighed and up against, you know, stuff like Unplugged Performance. They're only like an extra like pound, if that, compared to those wheels, which are like dedicated, super lightweight forged wheels. Next up, and the much bigger refresh, the interior. And the first thing that you'd see is gonna be the seats. They have been redesigned. I can't really explain it. You'd kind of just have to see the old seats and then see these seats. These seats just, I feel like, have more detail to them. They have more lines in them. They don't just look like big fluffy marshmallows anymore. They also got the perforation holes and everything, which definitely does give it a little bit more contrast. At least with the white seats, the black seats, it's not as noticeable. But yeah, I think the new seats look better than the old seats. Also, the front seats, as you can probably also see, are the Sport bucket seats, which are an even newer design, and they have much more aggressive bolstering, along with badging, if you can see that right there. I like the new Sport bucket seats. I don't find the bolstering to be overly aggressive. I am as of this morning, like 222, 6 foot. I have a decent amount of room, and I like that they keep me in my seat a whole lot better than my previous 3 did when I'm, you know, cornering and stuff like that. I think we got a little speed trap up here. We sure do. Imagine this cop pulls me over because I take this turn so bad. That's what I'm saying, man. I mean, this thing just picks up everyone. But yeah, back to the sport seats. I like them. I like that, you know, they have black piping. I like the different headrest. I overall think that these are really good looking sport seats. And these perforation holes aren't just for looks, as the front 2 seats are ventilated. They're also still heated, in case you're wondering. I have never been here before. But yeah, ventilation was added. I think it's nice. It is tied to your HVAC system, which I have had people reach out and kind of explain how that works. It's just circulating the air that's already in the car into the seat, so it makes sense that you would need to have it low if you actually want the seat to blow colder air. It'll just blow the air that's already in the cabin on your back. I also like how the ventilation goes all the way up your back. Now, the rear seats have the same seating position, so your legs are still at kind of like that angle upwards, but you do have a rear screen now, which is good for things like controlling your AC, like that's blowing on you from the back. You can connect Bluetooth headphones and music and watch entertainment, which I literally use none of that stuff because I don't have anyone ever sitting back there. So I mainly just use it for when I'm in the back and I need to move the passenger seat forward. You can also do that. Next up is going to be the new, and I don't know if this is what people are actually calling it, but it's just what I'm calling it, the 3rd gen center console. I mean, the last one was known as the 2nd gen center console. That's kind of just what I'm calling it. It's directly taken from the S and X, like the design of it is. And I didn't like it because the S and the X, ones were super finicky. There was a lot of movement because now you have 2 sliding doors instead of 1. And the refreshed 3s that I drove before getting this were the same way. They weren't as bad, but they still just didn't feel as sturdy as the old one that was in my, previous Model 3 was. But this one is not like that. It's very sturdy. So yeah, I'm a fan of the center console area. I think it just looks better than the old center console. And now that I know that they can put them out, without them having a ton of like wobble and play, then hey, that's good. However, the one thing I don't like about the center console area is that they removed one of the USB-C ports and they moved it to the underneath the armrest instead of being up in underneath the sliding door. I kind of liked it having it up front. I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. Plus, they also upped them to 65 watts. The screen I also think looks a lot better. I was actually in an older 3 the other day, and one of the very first things I noticed was the fact that the bezels just look so much more chunky on the old one just because they made the new one with smaller bezels. Then we have the steering wheel, which has also been redesigned, and I am a fan of how this one feels. The old one on the sides here kind of convexed out, where this one is more of like a concave in, so your thumbs wrap better into it. I'm a big fan of it. Now, I do know that there's the no stocks thing that people are complaining about. I personally don't have a problem with no stocks, and I've talked about this in the past. I've never had a problem with changing gears on the screen. That's like one of the easiest things. The turn signals are going to take you a little bit to get used to. And when they do work, because I have complained about them being a little sticky because they're like capacitive buttons and not physical buttons like on Cybertruck, I don't think that they're bad. It just takes a little bit getting used to, but I mean, I got used to it pretty quick. Now, keep in mind, I don't live in places with a lot of roundabouts. I've heard people saying that. Then again, when I go through roundabouts, I don't even really use my turn signal anyway. Maybe that's just an American thing. I don't know. The dash has also been redesigned, different materials, slightly different shape. It now comes stock with carbon fiber. Also, door cards redesigned as well. I like that, assuming you get white, that the white fully extends all the way up and around as if it is really just wrapping around you. Why do so many semi-trucks just kind of wobble in their lane? Ambient lighting is a big one. I really like how subtle it is, how it's kind of like just in the line of the interior. I think it looks really, really nice. And they also designed it, which I haven't seen anyone talk about. If you were to get out of the car and go around to the front and try to look down through the windshield, you wouldn't see the lighting just because the way they've designed it to where there's like an overhang, so there is no reflection at night. And I guess all of mine and other people's complaining about how the lights just aren't bright enough, Tesla has listened as the new update that's coming will allow you to adjust the ambient lighting brightness independent of the screen brightness, because as of right now, the only way you can adjust it is if you turn the screen brightness up or down. And then the last thing I really want to say is just the headliner. Like, Tesla, why do we still have this ugly headliner? Like, this is one of the reasons that I would never ever get black interior, just because like this is a super light head and I think it just looks cheap. Like with white it looks all right, it still doesn't look good. And just in general, it doesn't look good. It looks cheap. Alcantara is not really that premium or expensive of a material. And I feel like most people would be completely fine with these cars going up by 1,000 MSRP just to give us that dark Alcantara headliner. Like, come on, Tesla, like this looks so bad. You know, you don't realize how bad it looks because you just kind of get used to it until you go and you get in an S or an X or even Cybertruck and you realize just how much nicer the darker headliner is. Yeah, it looks cheap and it just matches nothing in the car. But yeah, under all these changes, it still drives, handles, and feels like a Model 3, which is more than likely why it doesn't feel like that I've owned this car for almost 2 months now. Day to day, when I'm just looking out the windshield and driving, it just feels like my old 3. Am I even allowed to be in this parking lot, man? Sometimes when I record these videos, I just drive into just the most random parking lots. I'm pretty sure this is a gym parking lot, and that guy's smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer. However, with that being said, there are 2 other things that definitely do differentiate this car from my old 3 that I am able to tell just, you know, driving and staring out the windshield, you know, not looking at all the new changes and redesigned stuff. And that's the performance and the ride quality. As for the ride quality, it's much smoother than my last 3. Tesla upgraded the suspension for the Refresh 3 like as a whole, but for the performance, they also gave it adaptive suspension. Like, I'm not joking, I have not taken this out of standard since I originally like got the car and was doing some testing just back and forth between that and sport. And not to mention that's on, you know, the stock 20-inch warp wheels. So I assume when I do switch to my winter wheels, which are 18s, it's gonna feel even better. Now at this point, people probably also wanna know about the cabin noise. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I can't really tell that big of a difference. Maybe between like 40 and 70, it's a little bit quieter, but normally I'm doing a little bit over that on like the highway and stuff, which is where it is gonna be the loudest. And also my last 3 already had double paned front glass, so it's not like I was coming from nothing. I see a lot of people that are really raving about how much quieter the cabin is are coming from, you know, 2018, 2019, 2020 Model 3s that didn't have anything, and those things also, not to mention, just rattled like crazy on the inside, which I mean, I guess isn't in the same category as road noise, but in car, you know, shifting of materials, the squeaking, the movement, the little rattle, yeah, that's non-existent with this car, which is something that I couldn't say about my last 3. Now for the performance, which I don't think it's really too surprising to say that this car is fantastic for its price if you qualify for the tax credit, and it's still a great price strictly performance wise even if you don't qualify for the tax credit. I have seen reports of this car stock though on 18s, so it's not like stripped or anything, 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds with a optimally conditioned battery. That is with rollout subtracted, so 2.9 without it. The best I've gotten has been a 2.9, no prep, no nothing, and that's just me standing on it, which means that it pretty much feels exactly like my old 3. 2.9, 3.1, same thing really. Though I didn't really care about down low performance improvement. If anything, it could have stayed exactly the same. I was more interested, and I feel like most people were more interested, in the top end performance. This car did deliver, though there's like a slight caveat. Numbers aside, if I was doing, let's say 60 in my old 3, and I stepped on it, right, like pedal all the way down, I would just get that, you know, instant acceleration, you know, no changing of gears feel. But that's about it, right? It wouldn't pin you back in your seat. It wouldn't do anything like that. It pretty much had 0 spark after 60. However, here in the new one, it pins me back at 60. Like I'm going 48 right here, and if I floored it, I'd probably hit the car in front of me, but hang on here. Let me see if I can just... It still has kick right there. It still kicks. And it will honestly keep you pinned back till about 70 to 80 miles an hour, at which point it's not that aggressive feeling anymore. But it still doesn't let up until about, I would say, 90 hitting 100. I'm so used to my last one where, you know, I know how long I'd need to, you know, step on it to get up to about 80 to 85. Where this one, because I got that extra power, I look down and I will literally be doing 100. And I'm like, okay, hang on, I gotta let off for a second. Which for normal driving just means the car feels more fun, feels more sporty. Down low performance is cool, yes, but in my opinion, top end performance is even cooler. And anything high speed related in terms of like lane changing or maneuvers is just easier. Now, if you do want to talk numbers, this car does 0 to 130 in about the time that it took my old 3 to go 60 to 130. The 60 to 130 of this car has been cut by roughly like 2 to 3 seconds, bringing it from the 11 seconds down into the 8s. In fact, the best quarter mile that I've seen with this car is a 10.75 or a 10.76 at 125 plus miles per hour with an optimal battery pack. For comparison, that's also around the best time that I've ever seen a refreshed Model S run. Now, I've been saying optimal or optimized battery pack or battery conditions. What does that mean? For just straight line acceleration, this car performs best when the battery is roughly about 130 degrees Fahrenheit. But unlike the S, there's no drag strip mode. There's no mode in the car that keeps the battery at that optimal level. So you have to do it all manually by supercharging, preconditioning, doing all this stuff right before you run it, and then you'll get those really good times. Tesla does state that being in insane mode, which I'm pointing to here, but I think my GoPro's dead, will keep battery temps at more of an optimal level for peak performance. But we've already seen testing that you still need to do all these other things to really get the good times. Yeah, top end is much improved. It just kind of sucks that you got to manually like battery manage to get everything that the car can offer. I'm hoping Tesla either drops a software performance boost or just gives us a drag strip mode. Now, because this is a performance model and I have mentioned the S, I do want to quickly mention the Plaid, and I've talked about this previously. That is still the best like dollar per horsepower that you can go with, even when buying new. However, if you are looking at used, that's where it gets even crazier. Like you can get a 22, which is like, if you get a 22, then you get the refreshed one with the tilting screen and the charge port and all that good stuff for like mid 60s, like 65. If you want one that's like a little bit lower mileage, then go up to 70. But assuming you don't qualify for the tax credit and you want just straight performance while also, you know, getting all the other luxuries that, you know, the S has to offer, better suspension, more storage space, all that stuff, I just buy a used Plaid. You could pass a Plaid that's standing still going 60 miles an hour in this car. You step on it, they step on it, and they would beat you to 130. But Plaid aside, I'm overall very happy with the performance bump while incurring pretty much a $0 price bump. Now, I've already made an entirely different video on everything that was wrong with my car at the time of delivery that you can go check out. It was all cosmetic stuff, so nothing mechanical that would prevent me from driving the car, and Tesla is fixing all of it. So do I think this car was worth the $57,000 that I paid? 100%. There is no other car that offers what this car offers for this amount of money. It's got all the benefits of being an EV, so it's super cheap to operate, especially here in my state, Kentucky, where everything's powered by coal. And I'm not one of those people that actually like cares about that. Like I care about the dollars, and it's extremely cheap to own an EV here. Running costs, so like maintenance and everything. I mean, I've owned 3 Model 3s now, and I've spent $0, and I've put tens of thousands of miles across all of them. Did these guys these two trucks just passed each other? I know maybe you can see the smoke. These two trucks just passed each other going the opposite way, and they both co-rolled each other. That's hilarious. Waking up every single morning with a full charge. I never have to go to gas stations again. Not to mention it's a Tesla, so you got the autopilot and the full self-driving. And while I'm not a full self-driving nut, I do like the autopilot, especially for road trips. It really does make long distance traveling 10 times easier. And then of course, all the tech and everything on the inside, I'm a big fan of it. I mentioned long distance traveling, and well, you got the supercharger network as well. And of course, last but not least, the performance, which we just talked about. I think the only car that rivals, or that's going to rival what this car has to offer, is going to be the refreshed Model Y performance whenever that comes out next year. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Let me know your thoughts on the new refreshed Model 3 performance, if you've been able to get behind the wheel. If you haven't, showrooms are actually doing test drives now, and it's so easy to test drive a Tesla. Like literally just go on the website, it'll show you where your closest one is, it'll tell you when to book, and you can like very specifically request the Model 3 performance. I highly recommend that you get behind the wheel just to really feel what it's like. If you are new around here and you do want to see more Tesla related stuff in your YouTube feed, then feel free to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.